Hello and welcome to the Presence Posse. Today we are presenting the topic, the power of presence in the collective. And as usual, I'm going to have the posse members introduce themselves. I'll introduce myself, and then I will have Joy introduce herself. Let's start with Bobby.
Hey, Danielle, and greetings to everybody that is watching. I'm Bobby Cobb. I'm a mindfulness coach and a liberation hypnotherapist. I help people see the world in just a little bit of a different light, more in harmony with the way that life and our mind and our experience actually works. Glad to be here.
Fred.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Fred Blum. My main focus or passion in life really is helping people that have climbed the ladder of success all the way to a really high rung before finding out that it didn't make them happy. And my job, as I see it, is not so much to make them climb back down the ladder, is to find out that happiness was never where they were looking for it in the first place. And so I help them look in the right direction.
You think happiness was not what they were looking for, or they were just looking for it in the wrong place?
Did I say happiness? Yeah, no, they were looking for it in the wrong place.
Ladder was against the wrong wall.
Exactly.
So you have a title that you use, though, Dr. Fred. What's your title you use?
Oh, I'm self-inquiry coach. Sometimes I say
self-inquiry coach. I like it. So I am Danielle McMahon, and I am a personal peace coach, and I am still in transition. Eventually going to just call myself a people whisperer. And all of the posse members here know about that, a little bit about people whispering. But at any rate, I am very excited today to have Joy Kingsborough here. I am recently certified by her in one of the courses that she created called Mastering the Brain Game. So Joy, if you would please introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. I'm so intrigued and excited. My name is Joy Kingsborough, and I call myself a coach. I've been a coach for a long time, but really I'm a guide to consciousness, how to shift our thinking to the different layers of mental thinking that are possible, coming from mind into what I call a total mind shift, where we can access different types of thinking patterns. And so I like to point people towards those possibilities. And I call myself really a possibilitarian. So it's nice to be here.
I like that.
Yes, I like possibilitarian too. So when we first started talking about the topic for today, I had suggested as a topic ascension, and Bobby had a different view of like beam me up, Scotty kind of view of ascension. So I wanted to just start there. What, Joy, would you say is your definition of ascension?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, isn't it? There's a lot of different ideas about that. From my perspective, ascension is about a shift in consciousness, not an ascension out of this planet. I don't perceive it that way. I know some people do, but to me, it's an ascension like a ladder of possible thinking, where we can go to ascend our viewpoint in the world, and that we can adjust our body to be able to maintain different thinking patterns, where we wake up and we think in possibility, we think in creation, we think in expansion, and versus thinking in fear and survival, that we can actually shift our consciousness, and therefore we ascend mentally, emotionally, and then our body makes adjustments to do that with us. So that's how I view ascension.
So that was the type of ascension that I was thinking about, because it had been explained to me by Joy as a term. I've heard the terms other places too, but they use it in a very similar context. So I was interested to hear, what exactly do you think of when you think of ascension, Bobby?
Well, to me, ascension and awakening and enlightenment are very, very loaded words. They and the reason that I pushed back a little bit last week, I think, just from the standpoint that they seem to imply a very difficult path that may take many, many lifetimes in order to be able to achieve. And I've got more of the view that, Fred highlighted at the very beginning of the talk, that we've been conditioned to believe that once we climb the ladder, once we've achieved enough, once we've got the right job and the right relationship and the right amount of money in the bank account, then we're going to be happy. So, and I don't believe that's the case either. Fred and I work in a very similar space that, we're both working with peak performers who are very good at setting goals, very good at achieving goals, and oftentimes wake up one day and go, where's the parade? Why, where's the blue sky and sunshine? Why am I still feeling this? And so I have a view of just us coming within, that it's not something that we have to ascend, it's who we are. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about all of these podcasts is that I don't yet feel like I'm disagreeing with Joy. I don't think at the end we will be. I think we just have like 7 different unique ways of describing whatever mountain it is that we're climbing. So, and I use that term, so that has to do with ascension as well. So I'm just like super interested to dive into this conversation and hear about it. But that's kind of my perspective of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I didn't bring it up to like start a conflict. Just that if we have that amongst us as posse members, that's going to be something that happens in the collective, right? That many people are going to be not real sure about what the term ascension means, and that people use it differently, or awakening or lightning or whatever, enlightenment that you said. And it's kind of funny that you use the term mountain, because one of Joy's partners, or one of her team members, has a very common thing that she says: there is no effing mountain. There's no mountain.
Oh, I think I'm a fan.
So, but we're all about simple. We're in these programs. Like, is it really that simple? Yeah, it actually is really that simple. Is it easy? No, because we have all this conditioning and all of this other layering that we need to find a way to let go, and find a way to function without all our conditioning that everyone else is functioning in as well. So that's why I wanted to bring this, presence in the collective as a topic. So we just changed the name a little bit. Fred, will you address that? Is that a similar view that you have of ascension, that it can be a loaded term?
I don't know. Let's find out. To me, it's ascension, whatever we want, enlightenment. It's just words. I don't want to. People can get very hung up on the words, and I'm reminded of the wonderful Zen quote about a finger pointing to the moon. Like, if you focus on the finger, you miss all the heavenly glory. So when we get caught up in language, ascension, enlightenment, self-realization, we're focusing on the finger. So for me, there is nowhere to get to. It's like, this is it. In this moment, you have everything you need to fully engage in this life, to be completely awake, to be completely engaged. And I think we miss that. Like Danielle said, it is very simple, and it's hard because we make it hard. but I understand that. So I don't mean to imply that, come on, everybody, just like wake up already, because that doesn't seem to work. But at the same time, I don't want to imply that it requires, like, sort of Bobby said, these 17 steps, and, you have to recite this mantra for 12 years. And, I think we are everything that we've been looking for. And the sooner we see that, the sooner we actually set foot on the path. Because I think most of people, that are playing this game, are actively running in the wrong direction, trying to find something that they're never going to find that way. So maybe we just need to turn the map back right side up, and it'll make more sense.
Interesting that you use the term map, because that's what I was thinking when you said the finger pointing towards the moon. Is the treasure map is not the treasure.
Right. The map is not closed, but
that's the saying that came to mind when you were explaining that view of it. So we're, I believe, all pretty much on the same page here, that presence, as we view it, is more than what I generally define it as. I generally just say it's being present in this moment without the conditioning covering you from the past, without the fear of the future affecting this present moment. Like, that's all that it is. It's just being present. But I think presence, as other people define it, is much more than that. It's being present to the possibility, right? It's being that possibilitarian, that there is more in this present moment than we have been taught to believe, or that we have been conditioned to observe or utilize, or any of that sort of thing. So if we develop that experience of presence in our personal life, if we help people develop that experience of presence in their life, then that becomes the presence in the collective. Bobby?
Yeah. My green pin doesn't show up. I'm just actually curious to get Joy's take on all of this. You are our guest. We've been,
and that's what I was going to do, is say, okay, so is that what would be your definition of presence? Is that ring true to you, that it's more than just being in the present moment, or is it just being in the present moment?
Just feels like an incomplete word. To me, there's present and then there's presence. I think understanding what being present is an action. It's something you learn to do. You become present. You make space in your mind or your heart in whatever way that you learn to come back in. I love what everybody's been saying so far. It is all of it's here. And knowing that there's a journey to learning to be present. But presence to me is an action. It's an involvement. It's a participation. It's I'm here in this moment with me, with all that I need, and I'm actively creating with reality that I am enjoying, engaging. It's a participation. So to me, I think sometimes that gets confused by, certainly I was confused in the very early years of thinking that once I got present, I sat in meditation all the time and I didn't have a life. And that's just not it, right? So for me, that's sort of how I feel. That's kind of maybe my take, the current words of the moment, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
I was just going to add, I mean, I'm making this up here, but it's like presence is almost like just like we enter, like it's the space we enter into. The act of being present is the act of aligning ourselves with this present moment. And then it's like when we're in the present moment, it's like this frictionless experience. And then there is that possibility, like Joy's pointing to access the creative powers, whatever they may be. there's something about living in the present. This is actually critical to my work, where there's nothing we really need to complete us. And I think that's really important, is that if we're going to talk about possibility and creation and all that stuff, that we're not doing it in a way that somehow is going to make me finally okay or worthy or happy, etc. Is that we start in the presence. We see that life is already perfect, that we are, like, happiness is so built into this present moment, so you don't have to get happiness somewhere else. We start from happiness or peace or fulfillment or worthiness or whatever you want to add to it. And then you play. You go forward into the life of creation just because you can.
Because you want to, yeah.
Yeah, for the joy of it, for the pure joy of creation.
Yeah.
So what's the difference then between the power of presence in the collective and ascension?
Well, for me, we're kind of getting back on interesting words. The idea of the collective in one way, there is in non-duality teaching, there's a very common phrase that shows up a lot, that who we are is the space inside of which everything occurs, through which everything is made, or is known rather, and of which everything is made. And like, when I think of the collective, although I think we will really serve ourselves by just getting beyond, the definitions of these words. But I think of the collective in a way that is the all there is that Fred is talking about, and that I think Joy brought up as well. It is this space inside of which everything appears, through which everything is known, of which everything is made. And if we were to use that as the word, although I guess I'm working against my desire to move beyond definitions, I think things just suddenly align so much more easily. And the power of presence is the ability to be one with that collective, with that space of infinite awake awareness that is all of this. And I don't know if I've
it was good that you brought that out, because I know that we're still kind of dabbling with words, but I want people to be able to actually grasp the words that we're using, because sometimes they are a barrier, right? Like, we can all agree and still not have the same way of saying it, the same words that we're using. So if we can kind of get that out of the way, then we can be more succinct in our delivery of what we want to share with people. So it was still in the topic, like, accessing the collective is what you had said. And my view of the collective is more like human and humanity, as opposed to I'm accessing that humanity. I can, but I see it a little differently. So Joy, what's your take?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's like all of this is accurate from the lens it's coming through, right? It's like we're pointing at a lot of the same thing. But I think there is something for those trying to really dive into this conversation that can be helpful, is to access presence, to be present, to say you're on a meditative journey as someone who's just tapping into this world, just learning, awakening. The idea of ascending can be so simple, of ascending from thinking in my ego, for lack of a better term, but maybe the feeling of I need to get something, like what you were talking about before, getting something from this life. I'm wanting to get something. That's a thinking pattern. And so when you ascend out of that thinking pattern, accessing presence, it's those things go together in a way that's more effective so that you can live in presence. Where I think that if you're in a mindset of needing to get something, people access the present moment, try to figure out how to get something there too. And so then it makes it really difficult for us, I think, as a human collective and the body, the collective of the bodies, to be able to work together in a playful way, whatever way we choose, which we're already doing. So it's kind of semantics, right? But I think there is something there of working towards, I guess, if you were to work towards something, just to be simple in language, working towards a shifting of your own thinking patterns so that in the presence you can live from that and not need to get anything to achieve the things we're talking about. And so ascension would be maybe the work of it or the invitation of the next thinking pattern. And the presence would be how you live it, choosing to live it present or choosing to live it from the material space, I guess.
I like that.
Yeah.
You know, I think the ego is going to take anything, you know, everything we say here, anything you read of some spiritual book, you talk about ascension, you talk about possibility, and it's going to say, oh, good, I can use this to like finally be worthy or whatever. You know, to me, that the funny thing about the ego, the irony of it is that its entire journey in life, as far as I can tell, parenthetically, is that there's only about half a dozen ways in which the ego ties itself in knots. Like, so we all have our own version of unworthiness or not good enough or not safe or not in control. There's really not that many. But whatever it is, like whatever your particular flavor of that is, we use everything to try and find, let's say, worthiness. But it can't ever really find worthiness because that would eliminate the need for your very identity. So you're like, so the ego's job is to seek, but not to find, you know? So that's why, from my perspective, the first job number one has to be to begin to recognize who you really are behind the ego. You know, we don't have to eliminate the ego. We just have to know this is just a mask that I put on. It's my Fred suit that I wear so that I can get along with the other identities out in the world. But you begin to lose your identification with it so that you know that it's not the part of you that should be running the show. And once we see that, we're okay. Now we can get out there and we can play in the world. This world literally can be a playground. Now, I don't always experience it that way. Frankly, some of the stuff that's happening in the world really pisses me off right now. But I'm doing the best I can with that. And I can now notice when my ego is more involved in something in the world that's upsetting me versus some truly, because there is a difference, right? I mean, you know, Jesus got angry in the Bible all the time. There's a point where like something else rises up that you say, this is something I have to intervene here or take a stance. But am I doing it from a position of ego to make myself feel better, or is it something else that's driving me?
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing, and it's maybe the witnessing, because you're talking to me as you're saying that. That's how I perceive ascension, is you're going from one witness to the next. So first it was the ego not aware there was another witness, to then being able to witness, to then being able to witness even more so that where the physical things happening in the world stop triggering you, that's a level of observer or awareness. And then it's I believe infinite.
Yeah,
from
probably.
There. Yeah.
I don't think there's like a finish line.
No.
I love the idea of playing in the world as well. You know, in a lot of Eastern religions, there's the concept of lila, which is the play of life that where we are here to enjoy. We just gotta make sure that we don't get caught up in the actor that is playing the role.
So do either of you have questions for Joy?
Well,
now that you know a little bit about her.
Do we agree?
I know a little bit about her, but I don't know. I mean, I'd like maybe to just give you a moment to just describe like some kind of synopsis or whatever of how you work or what your focus is.
Yeah, I think you know, I want to answer this in a way where I'm not caught up in too much of the modality aspect of things, but I do want to help people take separation, this idea that we are separate, that so in my work, I have a couple of programs that I work with that helps us, as you talked about so beautifully, knowing ourselves better. So I begin with helping people know, who you are. What do you want as a way of discovering who you are? What are your desires and where are those coming from? Are they coming from lack? Are they coming from a place of, to use your words, presence? Are they coming from, putting your ladder on the right wall, so to speak, really identifying all of those pieces. But then once that's identified and you have a sense of who you are and how this world is sort of playing this game, then can we really let go of separation, and can we walk together as humans in unity consciousness? So for me, unity consciousness is an idea that we can be whole. We can be united in our own consciousness. We can be whole and one within and have everything that is within us, and then move that out into the world in a series of projections and experiences and play. And so I help people discover how to do that. And how is kind of a funny word, but where to get the hows from within of how to do that. So how to, really helping them point to that. So I spend a lot of my work doing that and accessing the energy. I love to bring in science. I love to bring in things that help us understand that there's particles of energy within the body, outside of the body, that we can direct with our consciousness and use that as flow. So I like to use so from a modality perspective, I have a modality called quantum expansion, which is about that, of directing the flow of our conscious thought in order to play with the universe a little bit more, I think, succinctly, for people who are just learning to see what's possible here. Why is it that we're here? To ask those questions and play with life as we find out. Yeah.
I like that.
It's fun.
Yeah, and I like your the sequence. I think is really important, right? It's like, first you got to start from who you are,
right?
Or you spend the whole time chasing your tail. But from there, yeah, I mean, there's a million ways to access that creative space.
Yeah.
Whether we get into the science and the quantum stuff, or the law of attraction stuff, or there's a lot of ways people talk about it, and I think they all are valid when you're in the right space, energetically, consciousness, to do it. I was going to add something else about the collective, just another metaphor that might be useful. So I use the metaphor a lot of, and actually, to be fair, I'm stealing this from Ramana Maharshi, who some of you guys may, very well-known spiritual teacher in the 1900s. And it was, during his lifetime that the movies came out. And he thought that was the perfect metaphor for the human experience, is that there's a movie screen and that there's a movie shown on the screen. And that movie could be a love story or a comedy or horror movie. But the trick is, the shift in understanding is that we believe we've become identified with the movie. So we all think we're the star of our own movie. And the shift is to recognize that, in fact, who you are is the screen. You are the space in which the story of your life shows up. So now, to take that to the collective, most of us imagine, okay, great, I get that. So here's my movie screen right here. But now imagine an infinite movie screen, stretching in every direction. And we're all viewing our movie on one little portion of the screen, but the screen is infinite. So the collective is the infinite screen. That's who we are.
Yeah.
We all share one being, one screen. But so, it seems to me that the most powerful thing that we can do to impact the collective is to wake up ourselves. And maybe once we've done that, it seems kind of silly almost from this perspective to think that we can wake someone else up, because they're all occurring inside of me. But somehow in the dance and the play, whatever we call it, maybe that's fun or a worthwhile game also.
Yeah, I think I love that. I love that analogy. And I think we are having, I think that we are having fun with this in the waking up, like, hey, by the way, we're in a movie, I think we're enjoying the waking up, honestly. And we enjoy that not everybody's awake yet because we're still enjoying the waking up. And
it seems to be, I like to think that there's some larger intelligence here than just, I mean, the little minds that seem to be controlling things seem to make a giant mess.
For sure. Makes the movie really intoxicating. Yeah.
I have a client that I'm working with who is a big fan of Heath Ledger and knows a lot. I don't know that he ever knew him personally, but knows a lot about him, and told me a story about Heath Ledger going into this deep, dark spiral because he got lost in the role of the Joker. And, he forgot that he was the actor Heath Ledger who was taking on the role of the Joker and became overly identified with that. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And not unique.
Not unique at all.
Yeah. I remember when I was really enamored with the role of Joy, like all the dramas, all the things, right? Mm-hmm. I probably still am in ways I don't even recognize. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have a teenage son, so that's like you want to talk about the antidote to thinking you're like enlightened, and he's awesome. I don't mean to say that, and I don't mean to get on one of those, oh my God, but he at that stage in life, he's developing his identity. He's developing all of these things, and so it's fascinating to watch him build an identity that in some ways I know is going to cause him tremendous suffering, and to watch and to insert little teeny bits of whatever I can where I think appropriate, but to trust that his path, just like mine and just like everyone here and everyone that's going to watch this call, it's that there's no wrong way to do this.
Absolutely not. Yeah, my kids are grown, and I have a 28-year-old who's just now discovering that, maybe all this identity, maybe something wants to shift. Like he's just hitting that space. It's really beautiful to watch.
All this stuff that mom has been talking about forever.
Right?
It may actually make sense.
Yeah, my youngest is like, I only believe half of what you say. The rest is just ridiculous.
And which half changes every day.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, Danielle, you've been very quiet.
I'm enjoying listening to you guys. I knew that you would enjoy meeting one another, and I'm just soaking it in. One of the things that Joy kind of started on and said, so we start with remembering who we are, coming back to who we are, determining what we actually want, and then she left out the why we want it. Yeah. Like, I feel like that's an important piece of that too. Once you determine what it is that you want, what's the why behind that? For me, that excavation sort of it's intriguing, because I'll just get to a point where I don't know. know. And so what's the wall? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the next question and the next thing.
Well, I can tell you, for me, and I'm not pretending that I have the right answer to this question, but if you have to have a why, like some reason, then there immediately is going to also arise a why you shouldn't. Like it's going to call forth all of those competing ideas, And so to me, it's like, why not just pursue it because you want to, because somehow it intrigues you. Because, if I look at my life's journey, I made several major life decisions, like shifting professions, like in a heartbeat on 2 different occasions, moving across the country with like almost no thought, like literally. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but just to illustrate my point, right? It was like, no, I'm going to move to Texas, or we're going to move. I was married then, or, I'm tired of being a holistic chiropractor. I think I'm going to become a coach. And it was like, because I want to, because that just feels like the right choice for me right now. And if I had to come up with a reason, I think it would have actually made me more stressed, I'm just reading Angela's comments. I think there are steps to understanding who we are depending on where one is in development. Yeah, I would agree with that, Angela. Absolutely.
I'd love to answer to that because I agree with you. It's not about justification. It's actually about in the beginning of this journey, as we're talking to people as they're discovering who we are, we all agree that labels aren't needed. And yet in the beginning, they're helpful. Understanding certain layers of who we are can be helpful in nudging us awake to that next conversation. So we begin with that. And the why, we take people deeper into themselves of, why do you actually want this? Not because of something you're going to get or a justification, but as an invitation to the doorway of presence of, well, what is the deep why? What is it you're really looking for? The love, the happiness, the peace. Like, what's the thing you're actually seeking here? Not the, I want a new house, or I want a new career, or I want to move to, Hawaii, or whatever it is. It's not justification of the action, but where's the action coming from? Who wants this? Is it the ego, or is it something else? And that's what the why really means. For at least from my perspective in my work, that's where I'm really driving people to, is let's get underneath these desires and who you think you are. And then that's really useful, right? Because then that fuels you. If I think about in my work, I love unity consciousness. I love the play of it. I love love. I love being able to be in a conversation where love is the theme underneath it all, right? I love that you said that in the beginning. We were talking the love. So that lights me up. That's my why for everything. Like, I want to just express love. That just, I don't know. I feel like that's the play I'm here for. And so that's my deep why. Yeah.
For me, one of the wonderful things about working with clients or working with groups or whatever is seeing what, Joy, you just really beautifully illustrated, the difference between a want or a desire that comes from the ego, and there's a certain energy to that, there's a feeling to that, versus when it's coming from the being, where it's just this sense of there's just more aliveness. There's nothing to fix, there's nothing wrong, there's no better there than here. But there it is. There's an aliveness to it, and that's worth following, that aliveness, wherever it leads us.
Yeah. And Joy, when you were speaking, one of the questions that you asked is, who is wanting this? I think it was with the move to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Is it our authentic self who is really being drawn there, or is it our egoic body mind that, just thinks that if we make it to Hawaii, then we will have arrived? Yeah. And all of those explorations are so fascinating and so compelling. And those are threads that we can pull to, I still have a thing where if I get a customer service representative on a 1-800 number and they don't know what they're doing, or if they apologize, that can still trigger me. It used to trigger me a lot. Now it's not so much, and occasionally I kind of just catch it and laugh a little bit. Other times I get, sucked into the vortex sometimes as well. But it always is a recognition that it is the little egoic Bobby Cobb who, just wants this problem to be solved instantaneously. That's, having the issue here. Whereas if you are digging back into our authentic selves and getting more in harmony with that, I think life just becomes more joyful.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you guys familiar with, I think is it Richard Dawkins? And now I'm not thinking of his name properly. Yeah, Power versus Force.
No, that's David Hawkins.
David Hawkins, thank you. I'm like, oh, it's one of those names is rattling around.
Richard Dawkins, actually, funny enough, is like the opposite of all this because he wrote The God Delusion.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. No, other side of the conversation.
Yeah, right.
But what do you think of his model, looking at the consciousness and how we come to that place that is sort of the as us, as we can, he has a bit of an ascension model of thinking where the triggers fall away as we begin to think differently in our perceptions. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? His scale?
I use Hawkins' work a fair bit.
Yeah.
But you love it, Bobby. In my work with clients, I mean, I don't get into all the nuances of it and talk about, but it's a frequency model, right? So it goes from 0, which is dead, right, to the lowest frequency that he identified as shame, which is 20, and the highest frequency is enlightenment, which is between 700 and 1,000, and the cutoff point between what he calls force, which is the lower, that's the egoic version of life, is using force to make something happen. The cutoff point is 200, and it's the crossover, the first line above force, which is at 200, is called courage, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think so.
Correct, isn't it? And then it goes from there's a whole series moving up, through neutrality and love up to enlightenment. It's a beautiful model. He was an interesting dude.
I think so. And I love because at that level, when you're talking about courage, it's the courage to release control. So if you look, he's got another scale that I work with sometimes where it talks about going from, like, once you leave that level of shame and trying to control things, the courage activates the ability to release all that control, which interesting to me to bring it to the collective human experience. It feels like humanity is at that place, right? Where the control is so intense. There's this fight to not go beyond and to really courageously move beyond all the control structures, that I find it interesting, relating that to his work.
Well, especially if you look at the collective, that's an interesting thing, right? Because what is the collective, like if you were going to take the average of the collective consciousness at this time, well, that's a good question. I don't know where it is right, but I like your thinking on it. What does Miriam say? You see the collective as being a collection of collectives, not one unit of collective. I think it's a collection of
not too many loops, Miriam.
I think it would have to be. If above is below, then it kind of has to be, right? I don't know.
Okay. Something else about courage while we're on that subject. I have a simple model that I use with clients called the mechanics of effective inquiry. And there are just 3 steps, right? The 3 steps are willingness, clarity, and discipline. And then each step has a quality that you need in order to effectively implement it. So first of all, willingness, like you got to be willing to even step onto the path. But once you step onto that path, what you find out is that it takes courage. That's the quality in order to really be willing,
Yeah.
Like you say, hey, do you want to go skydiving? And I go, sure, I'll go skydiving. But when I'm standing on the edge of that open plane door, it takes courage to actually step off into the thing, right? And then the clarity and discipline. I mean, we don't have to get into that here, but it's just that there are layers that we have to go through in order to really get honest with ourselves and to be effective at looking at these illusions that we create, these aspects of our identity that seem so real that it's very hard to step away from them. It's literally like an addiction. That we feel like if we give up this part of ourselves, something bad will happen to us. It's,
Yeah, we'll lose the airplane while we fall in the parachute, right?
Exactly.
I think that's what for me, I would say 99% of my clients face that of, I now know who I am. I've discovered that, I'm aware of this thing called presence, and that I'm not this body, and I'm coming into it. They have that awareness, but the courage to live it in this body, to really show up that way, and to let all of the ego and the masks and the control fall away. I find that's the place where, it's similar, like, are you willing to do it? Is it worth what you're going to gain to let go of this, to overcome that fear, and then to use certainty to, you can discover what you are certain about in this vast sea of uncertainty. You can decide what you want to be certain about in order to sort of have some footing. I think about the skydiving analogy because it's something that I've experienced as well, jumping out of the airplane. What I was certain of is the guy on my back wanted to live as much as me. So I thought we have a chance to make it here. So I had that certainty. I didn't know how it was going to be when I landed, but at least I could lean into that certainty. And it gave me a little bit of peace. But as I was learning to be my own certainty, right?
Certainty is a funny thing. And this is not like, again, at different phases in the game, different qualities become important, because there's also uncertainty, right?
Uh-huh.
Like the ability or the willingness to just not even know how something's going to turn out, but to be able to just engage in it anyway.
Be excited about it. Yeah.
Maybe be excited about it, or to be open to it, or to have some trust that, like life either works, happens to you or for you. But yeah, I'm just throwing that in also because I can totally get the certainty part of it. But then I thought, this stuff, none of this comes with an instruction manual, right? So there's always that uncertainty that comes with it too.
Yeah, I love that. I think they work with each other. I think you need a little bit of both to play in this space. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
How you doing, Bobby?
I'm well. My screen just froze for like the last 3 minutes. So
no.
I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. One of the things that you guys brought up, and actually, you know what? Come back to me. I've kind of lost my thought. Let me reformulate it. I'll get back on in a second.
So, as you were saying, life happens to me.
Does life happen to us or for us?
For me. Yeah. Or does it happen as me?
Right. Or
I
for
like
me.
Because if you're the screen, like, right?
That's a nice. So yeah, that's actually a very nice additional question to add to that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the progression is in that living the question, not having to have the answer, not knowing how it's going to show up, but knowing that it's going to be okay. So the certainty for me has to be in, I'm going to still be at peace. It doesn't have to come out my way. It just has to come out okay. Like I can live with it, or I can be excited about it, or I can be at peace with it. I have a son. When you were talking about your teenage son and you were talking about your 28-year-old son, I have a 27-year-old son who is a rough stock rider in the rodeo. Now, from the time he was 3, he wanted to be in rodeo. And actually, there is rodeo for that age kid. So he started riding sheep and then he rode bulls. And when they put him like as a small 8-year-old, I'm not a very big person and he's not much bigger than me. They put him on a full-size bull. My husband was like, nope, we're not doing that. So from 8 to 15, this child begged us every year. Can I ride bulls? Can I ride bulls? Can I ride bulls? When he got to be 15, I'm like, if we don't let him ride bulls, he's going to find something worse. Okay. So he rode bulls and he won, right? Like he had a talent for it. He had a passion for it. But it was that helped me live the question, can I live with his choice? What brings him joy? What makes him feel alive? What his passion is? And people would question me all the time. I'm like, it's simple for me. If the consequences are dire, it won't be simple for me. But I'll understand that was his journey. And I still understand that that's his journey. And I don't know that he's going to make a different choice at some point. I feel like he will, but I don't know that. So I have to keep that, living the question of, is he going to call me from the rodeo and say, I won, I made money, or come get me, or I'm at the hospital, or I don't know. I mean, that it has been in watching my children grow that has inspired me to continue to grow. Right? Like seeing them come in that little package that they come in and develop all these things and become themselves. And all the time that I was in college and I was trying to determine where I fit and what I wanted to do next, there was this sort of question in me that, is it environment? Is it genetic? Is it interaction? What is it that's going to let me know what's next for me? So I didn't have the notion of intuition so much, but like Fred was talking about earlier, when I graduated from college with a degree in crops and soil sciences, I'm like, I'm going to be a horseshoer. And I could not explain that to anybody, why I would want to be a horseshoer. But it took no capital. I got to stay involved with horses. And I loved working hard. I've always been, I had been to that point very physically active and enjoyed it. College was the least active I'd been, and I didn't enjoy it. And I didn't want to keep going to school. And I knew those things. But to try to explain to somebody else why I wanted to work that physically hard, and it's not like it's one of those top 100 dirtiest jobs or whatever the TV show is, it's on there, right? Like, I don't know, but it was a great career for me until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And now it's time to do something different. So there's just a lot.
And Fred talking about him changing from, New York to Austin, Texas, and changing from chiropractor to coach. And, we've all gone through big changes where we just knew it was right. I left a job in 2003, and everyone that I knew thought I had lost my mind, except one guy. And he was my closest friend at the company. And he said, the only thing that surprises me about this is it took him this long to finally figure it out, that this was what he was supposed to be doing. And going back to the uncertainty, Yogi Berra's got a quote. I don't know that I'll get this exactly right, but I think I'll be pretty close. That it's humans are very poor at making predictions, particularly when the future is involved. And to the degree that we can get to the point that we can say, I don't know how this is going to unfold. And, it may be a disaster or it may be blissful, but I'm going to be okay. And I've got all of the resources. And if I'm here and if I'm present and if I'm aware and if I'm in tune with, the internal GPS that is coursing through me 24 hours a day, then I'll know what to do when the time is right to know. And sometimes the only guidance that you get is one step. Take a step in that direction, and then see how that does. And, sometimes it fulfills you, and sometimes it's like, oh, no, this was not what I was meant to be. But all of that's information.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing, Bobby. So I love the next step. Yeah.
Well, this ability to predict the future thing, it's like, I always think of it like we're driving on a dark highway, with no street lights at night, and all you've got are your headlights to tell you like what's next on the road. Now, how far do your headlights extend? What, 10 or 12 feet, something like that, right? So that's like the distance that you can literally plan, like the bridge may be out 100 feet down the road and you don't know that yet, but you can make decisions as far as you can see ahead. And, you can make plans, but you got to also be aware that like life is going to continually change. And so it's always a dance between how committed am I to my plan, this outcome that I set, versus how life is unfolding in this moment.
And I think that has a lot to do with pattern too. So I think about prediction, and we can predict a pattern as long as we don't interrupt it. We can know how the pattern is sort of unfolding. And then when we start to step in and interrupt that pattern, then we shift the future, right? We shift how we're experiencing things. But I think there is a pattern to things that if you're not ascending, if you're not, and I never used that word actually until this conversation, but as you're shifting your thinking, then you can interrupt that pattern. You can learn to create your own patterns in reality, and then you can sort of predict results that way. But you can't tell exactly how it's going to be, but you can predict it a bit of like, here's the flow of the probability, I guess, is maybe a better word.
Well, after you've driven the road a few times, you do know where,
Yeah, you get a feel for it. Yeah.
The predictable way that the road goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
So this has been a really fun conversation, and we're coming to the end of our hour. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion, Joy?
This has just been a lot of fun. This has been a great exploration, just to be able to love and have this conversation and to meet all of you. It's great. Thank you.
Fred?
Yeah, ditto. These are always fun conversations, and I hope that some people out there that are watching or listening now or on the recording get value from it as well. And let us know, please, if you are watching it now, or if you get the audio, or if you get to watch it later, please let us know. Put some comments in there and let us know what you think, or things you'd like to know more about, or topics you'd like us to address.
Bobby?
Well, I just want to thank Joy for joining us today and being a guest. When I read what Danielle had written about you, I kind of assumed that you were going to be one of us'ns, kind of, and you definitely are. So thank you for the generosity of your time and your knowledge and your ideas. And I just really appreciate you coming on to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, we lost Fred. Okay.
I really adored Fred until he went out of phase.
Maybe he'll come back, but we do need to kind of wrap it up. So thank you, Joy, and the other Posse members for being here and having a lively conversation. I always enjoy them. And I was a little bit concerned that I would be nervous today, but I wasn't. It was fun.
Great.
Thanks so much. And I'm probably supposed to say what we're doing next week. Like, what is our topic next week? Miriam, can you help me out on this?
I might be able to help you out a little bit on that. Unless Miriam is quicker. The ego as trickster is
there
next
it
week.
is.
So we're gonna be talking about the fact that the last stage of ascension is really this epic battle that goes on with the ego. Going back to the enlightenment thing, I heard somebody say this was their version, but it kind of resonated that I'm nervous about the word enlightenment, because that sounds like a word that the ego will want to grab a hold of and say, "I've got this for you." You know, I can show the enlightenment mask to the world, and we can pull this off.
Yeah, that's the final trick.
Yeah.
So that sounds like it's going to be a lively conversation as well. We're here every Monday, and we look forward to reading the comments and getting back to you. And we're not great about getting to them live. We try to catch the ones that get put up on the banner, but thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a great week.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joy, for joining us too.
Yeah, thank you.